Hey, welcome back. So let's continue finishing up this list. So the get image function is one that we need because we want to... Okay, let me skip this one for a second. Let's deal with the CSRF code. Since we already have a form over here, a login form of sorts. So let me just clean this up a little bit. If I go to the login view, I want to style this a bit. So what I'm going to do is say, let's say max width to 500 pixels. And let's change, I'm getting very used to Bootstrap and I don't like that. Margin auto, and yeah, I think that works. Padding top 20 pixels. Okay, good, because there I almost wrote MX auto the Bootstrap class. Okay, anyway, so I want this in the center like this. That's what I was doing that for. Okay, so what I want to do is show what CSRF is, even though this is not such a big deal anymore because standards have been changed in browsers. So CSRF codes are not that much of a big issue anymore. But let me just explain what they're used for, and maybe it's good to just have an extra layer of security, so therefore security purposes. But let me say they're not really that necessary these days because of how standards were changed. So what happens is, let me explain using this advanced software called Paint. So normally when you have a server like this, you have one server here, yes? And there's a user down here, and that user makes a request. So this is their screen over here. So the user will make a request for a page that is on this server. So let's say they request the login page, and that login page comes back. So the browser actually keeps track of where that page came from. If it came from this particular server here, because remember that a browser can be connected to many servers at the same time, because your browser can browse Google and Facebook at the same time, right? So maybe this is a Facebook server over here, and this one is a Google server over here. So same user here makes another request on another tab to this, and then they get back a form as well. So maybe there are two login forms here, one from Facebook, one from Google. Now what the user can actually do is, if I just inspect, because if you look at, let me go to my browser here. I can't find my mouse pointer here. I'm lost. Okay, so if I just grab this, right click and say view page source, I can easily check to see where this form is from. So let's say here form this method post, right? And because it doesn't have the action page, then I know it's just refreshing this very page. But if it did have an action here attribute, then it would have the exact location of where it's going to submit that information to. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is it's easy to find out which page is the information being submitted to, right? So if, for example, I want to hack the system and I don't really like the way the form is created here, maybe too complicated, I just want to spoof, I just want to pretend that I am a legitimate form. This could be a bank or something that that needs more security. So I can spoof a post request very easily by using Ajax. So JavaScript can do that quite easily. You just create an HTTP request using Ajax and you say it's a post request, and for as long as you send these very inputs, if I send an email, a password, and so on, it'll work just fine. There's no problem there. The server will receive that and say, okay, let me process this post this form that has been sent, because it's designed to do that, and as long as it meets the minimum requirements, right? But what has happened since then, because this would be a problem, because people would actually pretend to be other users that are logging in and stuff, and send maybe they can even try to overwhelm your system, your server, by sending thousands of post requests per second using a machine. To do that, they can use a bot instead and send thousands of requests, which is like what is known as a denial of service attack, where you get a server so busy, you use thousands of computers and send requests at the same time, and get a server so busy that it doesn't have time to respond to legitimate users. That's a denial of request attack. But the point is that somebody can send a form from anywhere, and your server will receive that form and just process it, because it thinks, okay, this is legitimate, it's a post request, let me do that. But what has happened since then is that browsers now check to see which server the post request is coming from. So for example, with facebook.com, if you send a post request without using, if it didn't originate from Facebook servers, it will be denied access. There's what is known as cross-site origin or something. I don't even remember the right term here. So that destroyed cross-site scripting, which was used to spoof post requests. But we can still add our own layer of security by putting what is known as a cross-site forgery request, CSRF, cross-site request forgery. That's what that CSRF stands for. Yeah. So what we can do is just echo out this. We'll do this. Okay, so you can just put that as a code. So what this will do is it's going to echo out a code here, an input, a hidden input with a code, so that when we try to submit the form, it will compare the code that is sent in the form and the code you have in your session. If they don't match, then that form does not belong to your server. It was taken from somewhere else, and maybe somebody's trying to forge that form. And also the second thing you can do, which isn't implemented in browsers, is that you can put an expiry date on each form, so that if the form is too old, you don't allow it to be submitted. They have to refresh the page to get a new one. So with this CSRF function, we can create a function like that. So let's create a function here that will do that. So we're going to say function CSRF. So of course you can call this function whatever you want. It doesn't need to take in any value whatsoever. But because we are dealing with the session class in this case, right? Because we are trying to save things in the session. So let's use our session class. I'm going to call it sesh is equal to new session, and then we'll do sesh set. So we want to set a value, and that value will be, what do I do here? So we'll put a key and a value pair. So the key will be CSRF, CSRF, like that. And then here we'll put an array. So the array will contain the key, or the hash in this case, and then comma. The other one is expires, so that we have an expiry date. So in the expiry date, what I would do is I'll put time, and time times, so I'll explain this in a bit, 60 by 60, that's, no, we're not multiplying, we are adding here, 60 times 60 times hour, or hours or something. So CSRF, here we can get an int called hours. We'll set the default value to 1. So this is you can set a value of how long you want the form to be active. So it could be an hour. You can put 0.5 for 30 minutes or 24 for 24 hours. So let's put that in brackets, and let's put that in brackets as well. And then here on the hash, we're just going to use the hash function. What algorithm are we going to use? Let's try and use, doesn't really matter here. I'll use SHA-1 maybe, or SHA-256. It doesn't really matter. We want to hash the key, but you don't have to hash it. It's just for as long as it's a value, you know, but it's cool to hash things, right? So let's just hash it. So what are we going to hash? We're just going to hash the current time, and let's put a salt or a value, just some random number or something. So I'm just going to say plus rand 0, maybe 99. Yeah, now this may be very hard to see, but let's do this. Let's just say key is equal to, that way it's easier to, let me put key over here. It's easier to debug and stuff. So we are hashing this using SHA-1, and what are we hashing? This is the information. So I'll show you the result of this. So here I'm just going to say return true and forget for now, and then let me do this so that you can see what this is doing. Let's go to our plugin.php. This is the basic auth. So inside the controller, I just want to echo out the hash like so. That's all I want to do. So let's start with that. Now I can just, and as you can see, this is the hashed value of time plus a random number. So if I refresh, it keeps doing that. Now you can change the algorithm you want. It doesn't really matter because there's MD5, which was very popular at some time. So MD5 is shorter than secure hash 256. So those are the 3 algorithms you can use. This one is a bit longer, so let's use that one. Yeah. Okay, so we use SHA-256. It's just secure hash. I think it's short for secure hash or something. Let's go to functions. Yes. So let's put SHA-256. I'm not saying the other one is more secure than the other. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so we're going to SHA this one. The time is the number of seconds since 1970 up to today. How many seconds have passed? And then to that, we just add a random number between 0 and 99, just as a sort, so that if somebody might be able to guess the time the form could have been loaded, they won't be able to guess this random number. And then they won't really guess the algo you are using. So you can be creative with this, but it doesn't need to be like that. It's just a simple security system, not that deep. And then the time here is the expiry date. So we're going to do expires is equal to, and over here I'm going to grab that, and expires is part of the array. I'll put that like so. Okay, great. So we set that value in the session, which is good. So now and also we have to return the, what do we return really? Interesting. CSRF, yes. Okay. Wait a minute. Here we could actually put a string key just to make things more interesting. Then CSRF like that. Okay, great. That way you can also specify the key where you want to store that, but because certain times, because this is going to be replacing the CSRF code for every form that you load, right? If you load a new form, the old one expires automatically. That's what happens. Or if you load a different form. Now, if you want those forms to be able to be loaded at the same time, you can put a different key and then they'll be treated as separate. So we can put key over here instead. Now the problem is we have key there and key there, which is not nice. So let me call this one session key. I hate that I use camel case certain times and not certain times, so that's not very good. I need consistency. Anyway, we'll do session key. That's what we use there, and this key is just for that one there. And then what we'll do is we're going to return the key like that. Okay, so let me remove this over here. Let's start with key is equal to an empty string. That way we don't have errors if none of this works. Okay, great. Now, instead of just returning key, because this is very specific, we have to have an input there. So I'll put input is equal to input and then put type. The type should be hidden, like so. And then the value is going to be that particular key. Now, yeah, this is going to be a problem. So let me swap these guys. Let me put double quotes on the outside so I can use variables within the string. Like so. Yep, like that. And let's close that. Okay, so that's what we're returning there. And we need a name, of course. That's going to be C. Actually, the name will be the key. So let me grab this key over here and let's put it there, like so. Okay, goody. This looks great. Let's see what happens. So if I now refresh my page, session not found, class session not found. Really? Yeah, that's because we have to call it from the core namespace. Sorry about that. Let me refresh, and there we go. Okay, so let me remove that echo there. Back to my plugin. Let me remove this. Okay. So if I now refresh, this is what I get. Doesn't look like much has changed, but if we view the page source, you will see that there's now an input here that's hidden, and it has a value of this ridiculous value here, and it's named CSRF. Okay. So now watch that. If I'm, when calling or when creating the CSRF, this thing here, I can actually specify the key. So I'll say my key, for example, like that, so that I make this form unique. And if I refresh here, you will see that that changes to my key, like so. Okay. And this should be saved in the, so let me remove that. This is saved in the session. So if I now go to, this is the login plugin, right? If I now go to my controller, I can now check to see if something was posted, then I can check for the CRF code there. So to check that, we can use the request class. So say request is equal to new core. Sorry about that, core request. Like that, and then we can say request and posted like that, because I want to check if something was posted. Why am I typing like this? So if something was posted, then now I can just echo out whatever is inside request post, like so. So let's see that in action. So if I now come here and refresh my page, nothing happens, but if I submit, okay, so core request return type must be of type string, array returned where? Inside post. Ah, right. Okay, so those are the mistakes we should check for. Inside request, there's this post. I don't know why I said it should return a string. This returns a mixed value. Yeah, depending on the situation. Or instead, we can be more explicit. We can say string or array, like that. That reduces the number of errors that can come through. Okay, so now as you can see, this is what was submitted: the email, password, gender, and the CSRF code. So at that point, we can write a function to confirm or verify the CSRF, right? So let's duplicate this and say CSRF verify, like that. Now, if you want, you can actually put this inside the session class. You can put these functions inside the session class instead, but that's up to you. I just like the idea of just typing CSRF in the view file here without having to instantiate classes. That's why I'm doing it this way. So to verify here, we may expect a key, and we don't know the number of hours here. Let me remove that. And actually the expiry date here, let me explain what's happening here. So there's time, right? There's time, which is the number of seconds from 1970 to now when the form is loaded. And then that's in number of seconds, right? So here 60 seconds is 1 minute. If we multiply that 1 minute times 60, we make an hour. So this is 1 hour here. Okay, now 1 hour, if we multiply 1 times 1, that's still 1 hour, right? So that's the number of seconds in an hour. So if we add an hour, so this is the number of seconds till now, and then we add an hour's worth of seconds, so it means this expires in an hour's time. Now if you change that to a 2 or a 3, likewise, whatever value you get here multiplied by that number is the number of hours you can add to the expiry date. So when we are verifying, we should first check to see if the key exists and stuff. So here what I'll do is we're gonna say so there's a session thingy there. So I want to grab the array, or I'm gonna call it data is equal to, inside the session I'm gonna do get, and I want that key. The key is the sesh key here, like that. Okay, the default is CSRF, so we'll use that instead. So now if I do dd to show the data, and let's die over here. Now I'm gonna copy this verify to the plugin. So right here, when we echo these guys, instead of echoing this entire thing, I just want to echo do CSRF verify. Wait a minute. Okay, so I echoed that, and within that echo I'm doing another echo. That's crazy. Anyway, let me use return instead here. So I'm gonna use return, and there we go. So if I now refresh, resend. Okay, so CS return value must be of type string. Array was returned. Oh my god. Okay, so we are saying string. Okay, eventually it's going to be a string. No, actually not even a string. This has to be a boolean, but for now let's just do mixed, like that. This has to return true or false. So let me refresh again. Okay, so this is what we get. So from this form being submitted, this is the info we get. So this is when it expires. So we can compare right now to say what is the actual so instead of this, let me remove that. Let me just do verify, like so, and then come back here, and instead of return I'm going to say dd data. Then at the same time I want to return the current time, like that, so you can see the difference. So if I now refresh, you will see this is the current time. It's smaller than this one. Yeah, so that's smaller, this is bigger. So this is when it expires. So we can check to see the difference. So data comes in here. So we have to check if is array, okay, data, then it means things are going as planned. We found that. So instead of returning this here, we'll return false at the end here, because this is going to be a boolean, true or false. So if this is an array, then things are going well. So let's check if the thing has expired. That's number one. Oh, let's just check the keys. So here I'm just going to say if data, this is an array, so data key is equal to, we need to check, see, wait a second, wait, yeah, this has to be done automatically. So what I'm gonna do is, let's expect a post variable here, like so. This is going to be an array. So I'm going to call it post like this without the underscore, because I don't want it to get the global variable. So I just want this as it is. In fact, let me put small letters just to avoid confusion. So array post, okay, so if not empty, so let's just do this and say if empty, post, the key that I want is sesh key. If that value does not exist in the post, return false. Okay, great. So we eliminate, if the CSRF key is not there in the post variable, we immediately disqualify that. We don't even go further. And then we don't need key is equal to empty here, because we're not returning that anymore. Then if we go ahead, let's instantiate a class. Let's grab the data from the session class, and then let's make comparisons here. So with this right there, so if this exists, so if data key is equal to that, then we are in the game. So what you could do instead, if it's not, it has to be the same, then let's return false again. That way we maintain the level here. We don't have to go within 3 levels deep inside if statements. So we return that if they're not the same. But if they're the same, let's check for expiry date now. So you can put comments within these things so that you easily remember the code a few years from now. What else? We need another if statement. So duplicate that, and we'll check expires. So if data expires is greater than the current time, okay, so expires, if it's greater than the current time, it means it's still valid. Okay, so here we return true. This is the only time we return true. And let me remove here. We need a way to actually remove items from the session. How did I not add this? This should be session pop, like that. And let's put our session key there, like so. Session pop, and we remove that value. Okay. This should only happen in here. Okay, like that. All right. So let's go to the session class, and let's put the pop function here. So there's a get, there's a reset user, there's all. Yeah, so we don't have a way to delete an item from there. So I'll duplicate the get, change it to pop, Now what pop does is it will check if it's not empty. Okay, so if it's not empty, which means it's empty, we're going to return that value. But before we return it, we have to delete it. So in order to be able to do that, we're going to say var is equal to, so we set that to a var and then unset this guy. So we're going to say unset whatever the item is and then return the item var, like that. Otherwise we return false. So what we are doing here is finding if the item we want to remove exists, and then send it to a value, then remove it, and then return that value. So pop returns that value and removes it from the array. So that's what we are doing inside here. So session pop, that works to remove things. Okay, good. So now this thing is going to either return true or false depending on what's going on. So if I go back to my plugin and I say CSS let me do a var dump so that it tells me what data it returns with its data type. So if I come back here and refresh, okay, too few arguments to CS. Okay, that's right, actually. So here I'm supposed to send the content of my post variable here. So I'll do that because that's where it is. So back here I will refresh and resend. So it tells me the value is false. Why? Let me try and submit. Okay, now it's true. Wait, had it expired already? What? Wait a minute. This can't be right. Let's see. This is 60 by 60. 60 seconds by 60 seconds. That's an hour, right? I'm getting confused here. That's an hour. And then times hours, which is 1. That's times 1, the same value. Sounds about right. Anyway, if it turns out something is wrong here, we will see it later and fix it. But right now, if I submit, it tells me the CSRF has passed the test. Yeah, but if let's try, for example, and put intentionally the wrong value, because I can easily do that by going to functions, and the return value, instead of returning this key here, I can to the key I can add something. So right about here I can say key dot equals 1 at the end, like that, and then submit. Now it's false. So you see it doesn't compute. And then another thing we can do is deal with the expiry. We can say expires minus 10,000 or something. So let's see how that will work. It still goes to false because it shows that it has expired. But if I remove this, let's see if it will return to true. Yeah, there it does. Okay, so our CSRF thingy is working as it should. So there it is. So we'll have to be doing this on every post and stuff, every form submit that we do. Okay, great guys, so far so good. What am I missing? 1 second. Okay, so that's a CSRF. All right, so with the get image function, let's create it in the functions page here. So I'm gonna do function get image. Now this one is useful because with the way we've done the htaccess system here, every time we load an image, we need to include the root variable like this. So the reason we have to create a function, it's better because in case we want to change how images are loaded in future, we can easily just change this function. And it's cumbersome just typing the root on every image tag that we have. So instead, here we're going to say the image name. So this is a string of the path, and this can be empty, and the image type as well is a thing. So here we can put something like maybe the gender, for example. Let's default it to male like this. What else can we add here? The image type, I think that's about it. So let's say, for example, we want to have placeholder images. In case the image isn't found, this function will help us return a placeholder instead. So what we'll do is we'll figure out if the file exists first of all. So if the file exists in the path like this, then we're going to return the root with the image path over here. So root slash and then the path of the image like that. But at the same time, we need to check of the type. So if type is equal to male, this means that when actually maybe let's put this as maybe post or something. So if type is equal to post, let me return this like so. Now if the image is not found, let's do a return here, and let's return a very specific image. Oh, wait a minute. If file exists, yeah, no, that's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do is this, and let me copy that. So if the file exists, let's return that file back like so. So it's as simple as that. We actually don't need any of this. Let's just do this, actually. Much cleaner. So if not file exists, let's start with the negative version. So if the file does, no, actually let's start with if the file exists, let's return it with a path there at the beginning. Okay, great. But then if it does not exist, we check first of all what the type is here, and then we return the appropriate placeholder. So this is about placeholders here. So we're going to have three types. So one is post, one is male, and the other is female. That way we can have a proper placeholder for each one of these. And we don't need path at this point because these will be hard-coded values. So these will be inside assets, images, and then we're going to have one is titled noimage.jpg. So these are actual files that you're going to put. So I went ahead and downloaded some files here. So inside my assets images folder, if I open this folder, this is what I have. So I have a loader.gif. What this loader does is, if you load it in your browser, for example, let me just try and load it with photos here. This is what it does. So it's a GIF, animated GIF. So it's just a loader like this, transparent. So you can Google this and just download those images. And then there's no image, which is a JPEG image. Just says no image available as a placeholder here. And then we have one for user female. That's a placeholder, and user male.jpg. So you can download these files. Obviously they'll be in the project folder as well, but you can download the ones you want. This is 360 by 360. It's good if they're square images. So 360 by 360. The resolution doesn't really matter. This is 350 by 350. The other one is 256. So those are the images I'm targeting. So this one, if it's a post, because you don't want inside a post, let's say there's a post and there's a missing image in the post, instead of showing a placeholder for, this is the more appropriate placeholder to show on a post. It would be very weird if we show this as a placeholder for a missing image in a post. However, if a user's image is missing, this is the appropriate one to show. And if you have gender for male and female, you can show the you can choose which one you want to show. So for male there is user underscore male, and for female there is user underscore female, like that. So this is the get image. Now if the type is none of these for some reason, we can just return this no image here down here, like that. Okay, so great. So let's see how this is useful in action. So if I refresh here, let's say for example I had a logo that I wanted to add. You can also put one for logo. In case there's a missing logo, then you can put a placeholder logo. That's up to you. So if there's an image I want to put but it does not exist, what I can do in the login view here, I can do this. I can put an image tag. So instead of on the source to just type the image, what I do is I say get image, like that, and then close, like so. And then let me put some styles here, for example, width, max width 250 pixels, like that. So this is what I can do. I can just say get image, like that. Even as it is like this, it'll work just fine. If I refresh, let me do this, you'll see there's an image here showing, right? But if I then go ahead and add two params here and change this to male, for example, it'll show that instead. And of course you can guess what will show if I put the female version. And there it is. So these are placeholders for images that do not exist. So if I type an image here, image path.jpg, and I know that image does not exist, and then I put post like that, it means it will show the post placeholder if this image does not exist. And we know it doesn't, so that's why you get that. Okay, so just all to make things easier for us, let me do that. Now we finally get to the image rotate part. Now this part is something I missed in the resize part of the image class here. So in here where we are cropping an image, actually we should do this on the resize part of things. So at this point here on the wait a minute, I don't even know when to rotate this image. You may have to choose when to rotate this image. Either you can rotate it immediately after doing this, or you can rotate it after doing the resize. I think it would be more memory safe if we do it after the resize. So do what you can do and check to see which one works better, whether you rotate the destination image or the source image. That's up to you. Just choose which one is better. So what we want to do is rotate the image. Now the reason for this is when you're using a real camera, sometimes when you rotate your image, you find that after you resize the image, it flips. So unfortunately I don't have an image example of from a real camera, but that can happen sometimes. So let's just prepare for it. So what we can do is, let me show you an example of rotating an image. Image rotation is very simple. It's just one function. So let me grab an image here, maybe one of these, something we can clearly see, and it has to be a JPEG. So this should only be added to JPEGs only, so because those are the image formats that come from cameras. So what we're going to do is right about here, Okay, before we do any of this, let me go to basic auth plugin. In the controller here, I'm going to do img is equal to new core image, like that. And then I'm going to say image, let's use get thumbnail so that it can do all those file copy and stuff for us. So image.jpg, like that. So I want a resolution that's specific, maybe 200 by 200 pixels. All right, so let's check out that image. Have I copied an image? Yes, I have. Let's come here. So this is the image. The image is 800 by 1000, so it's taller than it is wide. So let me just put 2 by 300. So if I happen to refresh my page here, I'll find that it has created a thumbnail, which is this one. Okay, so the original and the thumbnail. So great, things are working fine, but let's try and rotate this thumbnail version. So I'll go back to my image class here, and right about here, after the destination image has been created, let's try and after we destroy the other image so that we have more room for memory. So I'm going to do destination image is equal to, and I'm going to say image rotate, like that. Okay, so I'll rotate the destination image. What angle do I want to rotate? That's 45 degrees. Background color, we don't really care. Let's just put that black 0. So just with that, that should change how things are done. So if I refresh now and go back to plugin, okay, so it didn't override because the file already exists. So I'll delete the thumbnail first and then refresh. So once I refresh now and go back to this, you will notice that now the image is rotated 45 degrees. So original and this one here. So you can rotate by whatever number of degrees you want. Ideally, you'd rotate by 90 degrees because images look weird at 45 degree angle. So let me try and refresh that. Let's see if that works well. Yeah, so you see we have a rotation after the fact. So clearly this rotation doesn't work very well because then our resolution is all messed up. So maybe we should do it a little earlier before this. So I'm going to cut this out and let's go to where we create, not image create through color, but right after, right at this point, wait, why is the image destroy? This should have been the ideal place though to do this, but oddly enough it isn't working. So let's rotate the image right here. So I'm going to remove this dist because we are dealing with image over here. So let's try and image rotate that. I'm going to refresh and let's see what we've got. Oh, I needed to delete that, sorry. Let me refresh. Let's see what happens. Yeah, practically the same thing. Nothing has changed, I guess. Oh, because get thumbnail is actually... I see what's happening here. Get thumbnail is actually a cropping mechanism. So yeah, that's why it looks something like that. I just wanted a resize and a rotation, so that makes sense. So we'll do it right here. Now the reason we have to do it in the resize is because the resize is a thing we do before anything else, and we lose that information in the file. So the original file contains information about its orientation. So hopefully it's not sexual orientation. Okay, so orientation, like that, how much to rotate. or let's just call this one angle, shall we? Something like that. So I'm going to copy this. So we need to determine the angle of the file before we do any sort of manipulation to it. So I would rather we do it here. So angle, I'm going to set that to 0. And then come down here and say if angle is not equal to 0, then we rotate. So first of all, type is supposed to be equal to image JPEG as well. That's important, so we don't waste time with trying to figure this out with other formats. So if, let's do this, if type is equal to, let's do that. So if type is equal to image JPEG and angle is not 0, then let's rotate this guy. Okay, great. So that rotation is done. But how then do we determine what to rotate? So let's go to get thumbnail here for a second. So on get thumbnail here, I'm going to do die here. And what I want to do is echo something inside here. So what I'll do is say there's a function called exif read data. So there's what is known as exif data. Exif, I think, means something like this is image format, exchangeable image format. I think that's what it means. So let's put file name here, like so. I just wanted to return the file name here, the data of the exif data. So this is the image we are dealing with. The file name is image.jpg, and then there's also this extra data here. And as you can see, orientation is equal to 1. So I guess 1 means nothing. So we want to check if, so if you take a photo from a camera and it's not oriented straight, this number will be very different from 1. It will be something else. So I already did some calculations in the previous video. I tested all kinds. I used my own camera and tilted it a few times, rotated it a few times, took a few photos to see how different this value is going to be depending on the orientation. And after figuring that out, I came up with some if statements that will determine how much I need to rotate the image to take it back to normal. So, but the thing we are going to look for is the orientation in here. So if inside the array orientation exists, then we know that we've got a number there. So let me copy. 1 actually means it's rotated somehow, somewhat. Okay, so inside the exif data there, we want to find out, let me do this, and then I'm going to say exif is equal to, and then here I'm just going to say exif orientation, like that, just to see if I can grab that number 1. So if I refresh, and that number is there, so that's great. So I'll grab this info, cut it out from here, and let's take it to our resize part here. So we want to do this right after saying angle. And we only want to do this if, actually, let me grab this. Let's put this over here. Angle is equal to 1. We only want to do this here when the image is a JPEG, right? Okay, let me just do it here. I'm gonna say if type is equal to image/JPEG. Let's do some reorientation to find out what angle we need. So we'll do this and remove these guys. So here I'll put the @ symbol just so that it suppresses any errors, just in case, because sometimes you find weird errors coming up. So that will ensure that we switch off error reporting for this particular thing. And then all we need to do is say if not empty, because not empty is going to check if it exists in the first place. So if not empty, exif orientation. Then now we can put a switch statement again. To figure out what to do with it. So we say exif orientation is the switch. Okay, so if case is equal to 1, we do something. Now I have some if statements here already did. I don't want to retype this. Let me remove this die over here and paste like so. So this is there's actually an if statement here. Anyway, there's 3. I prefer the switch statement instead. So let's do 3 and put a break code there. So there's 3, there's 5, there's 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, and then there's 8. The other ones I omitted are because they're just like the same as if you don't reorient or something. So instead of orientation that I used in a previous thing, we're going to change that to angle, but let's leave it as it is now. So this is going to rotate 180 degrees left or something. Orientation on 5, this is what we have. So on 6 we have this, so same as 5, I guess. This is how we orient. Wait, 7, what's on 7? This one. Boom. Wait, it's all the same. Anyway, number 8, 90 degrees. Okay, otherwise we just set it to 0. Yeah. So case 1 we ignore, so we ignore all the others. So 180, 90, 90, 90, 90. So 180 minus 90. Okay, makes sense. Let me remove this now. Okay, there we go. Then let's change the word orientation to angle that we are using in here, like so. Much shorter. All right, so great. Now angle is, yeah, we've calculated the angle. So once we have that angle size, that's what's going to be used down here. Where is that? Right about here. If it's not 0, then the image will be rotated. So give it a test and see with those images that have orientation data straight from a camera, Canon camera preferably, or Sony or something like that. Okay, so that's image rotation. That solves that problem there. Somebody had complained in the comments that that's what's happening for them, and I realized that I normally forget to do this in recent tutorials. So there we are. That's how you rotate your images. So let's just run that thing to make sure that we haven't broken anything. Thumbnails will still show up as intended. So I'm going to refresh the page, and let's go back here, and thumbnails do show. And this image wasn't rotated because it doesn't need to be rotated. Alright guys, so that does all the fixes. Now we are going to go ahead and do the command line too, because everything else is pretty much done for our framework. We just need that command line to complete things. So let me close all the files here, and yeah. So I'll see you in the next tutorial.